Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing some work on the Mk1, so we're going to be spraying in some cavity wax into the sills and the back quarters. Behind the rear arch, anyway. So we spraying some cavity wax in there, doing a bit of underseal work up underneath that the paint shop didn't get round to doing before the truck came back. While we're doing that as well, I'm going to give you the rundown on how I came to own the car, where I found it, the condition it was in, the stuff that I spotted immediately, the stuff that inevitably we found when we started to strip it down, the work that's been done to date, as well as just let you have an idea of what's coming in the future. So what are the plans from now? What's the work still to be done? I would say we'll talk about timescales, but this was a 1 year project, and here we are 4 years later. So I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee, handily prepared earlier, and let's have a bit of a chat. Okay, so while I don't want to give you an entire life history, I do need to set a bit of context. So let's go back to 2016, to the summer. I've bought and sold lots of cars over the years, and I've always wanted a Mk1 Caddy. Always something about them, the industrial nature really appealed to me, although just for the record I have no reason to have a pickup truck whatsoever. Just thought they were cool, a bit rarer than a Mk1 Golf as well. So always thought, yeah, let's give it a go, let's buy one and have it as a daily driver. Now that was always the plan, was to daily it. I really like the look of a used work truck. Funny, so we end up with this. But that was the plan. Buy something that's usable, decent condition, doesn't need a whole lot of work, but also you can keep it, I don't want to say the word ratty, that's not going for the rat look, but just a type of truck you could throw stuff into the back of it, but also then drive it down to a show and people would respect it for what it was. Summer 2016, my wife turns to me and says, okay, if you're going to buy a Caddy, if that's a dream, that's something you want to do, go and do it now. Well, as a car guy, I didn't need asked twice. I went straight on to eBay, trying to find a Caddy, found a brilliant Mk1, just had a full paint job, it had a rear arch as well did into it, it had sills done on it in lovely cream colour, axle flipped, it was perfect, it was exactly what I wanted. Someone had done all of the heavy lifting, and it was basically ready to drive and enjoy. So being in Northern Ireland, what you need to understand is that everything involves a flight and a ferry. So I looked up the flights, I made sure I could get the time off work. I'll go on Friday, I'll go and collect the car, great, everything good. Last thing I did, run an HPI check. HPI check came back and said the truck was Cat C. Thank you, Mr. Motorbiker. Not much of a problem in that, the trucks weren't really worth an awful lot. At one point, it would be quite easy to write them off. So I messaged the seller and said, listen, it was Cat C when you owned it, what happened to it? And he got really, really cagey about it. He didn't want to tell me, basically started throwing back, just said, listen, it's nothing to be worried about, these trucks are old, but never actually answered the question as what happened to the truck, and that really, really put me off. So that one didn't work out. I then really nearly bought a local truck that needed a bit of restoration work. That didn't work out. It was just too far gone. We almost had a deal done on it, including the restoration work and the paint job, but when we put it up in the ramp, it was just too far gone, so that didn't work out. But you can imagine by this point, having been granted permission to go and buy my dream car, dream truck, I was getting quite impatient. And then, browsing eBay one night, as I always did, a brown Mk1 Caddy Sport pops up, and that was this truck. So it sat up for a while as a classified ad. It was a bit too expensive, and the reason I thought it was a bit too expensive was the fact it was brown. So these never came out of the factory brown. It had obviously been painted at some stage. It had the whole bed and rear section was all hand painted in some kind of red boat paint, it looked like. Now, it looked clean, it looked straight. The big thing that attracted to me was that the majority of the sport-only bits were still there. So the body kit was still there. It was the right engine and gearbox were in it. The original seats, although they'd been slightly retrimmed over the years, were still there. So all of the parts that made a sport were there. A few messages forward and back with the owner, we got talking, couldn't really agree on a price. He then listed it as an auction. So I bid, end of the auction came, I won the auction, but it was still underneath the reserve. So we went forward and back after that when he realised that perhaps because of its lack of originality, it wasn't quite worth what he thought it was. We went forward and back, agreed a price, I booked flights, jumped on a plane, was in London 2 days later. Get to the car, eventually, off the plane, onto the train, get to the car. The car looks clean, it just had an MOT put on it so that we could drive it up to the boat. Hadn't actually turned a wheel in over 10 years prior to that, which I never really thought about. Probably not a great decision to jump on a plane with the intention of driving a car home that hasn't driven in 10 years, but there we have it. So MOT looked round it and initially saw, okay, it's rough. I mean, it was rough. It had been painted, but not particularly well. There were lots of fish eyes. There were kind of lacquer pale bubble things, like the body kit had been painted separately to the car, but then put back onto the car and lacquered. So the lacquer ran from the actual body lines onto the body kit. So I thought, okay, like someone's cut a few quarters when doing a repaint, but other than that, it was quite honest. It was almost as described, and the plan was drive it home, drive it for a year as it was. It had MOT, make the most of it, and after that, then take it off the road, do a light restoration, but it was never an intention to pull it all to bits. Is it ever the intention to pull it all to bits? I don't know whether it's just me or it's a car person thing. Like, is it? It's never the intention, and here we are 4 years later with a shell that, you know, has more new panels on it than it does original panels. So that was it. So car's home, we're all good to go, or so we thought, and that was when the next discoveries came. So we'll head over there, talk about that. So the car was back. First thing we did, bring it around, put it on a ramp. Didn't find anything horrific, which was good, fairly solid. Sills looked good. All the usual weak points of a Mk1 Caddy or a Mk1 Golf looked pretty good. There was a suspect bit at the back of the rear bulkhead that I thought, where it had been painted over in that boat paint, as I said earlier. It just didn't quite look right. So we took a screwdriver to that, put a screwdriver straight through it. Someone had decided, instead of actually welding in and fixing the issue of the rust in the rear bulkhead, that actually they just silicone over the top of it because, you know, why not? That was the point at which I started to pull the rear bed out. I thought, well, if there's rust in at the, you know, rear bulkhead of the cab and onto the rear floor, then maybe there's rust further on. There was nothing as I tore it down that actually was horrific. It was just a lot of small fixes were needed. So at this point it was ready for welding and paint. Welding is not my strong suit by any stretch of the imagination. It's something I definitely want to get better at, and hopefully you guys come along as part of that journey in the future. But this wasn't the project to be learning that skill. So it went away to a local paint shop to have the welding work done as well as the paint work. And that really brings us back to today. Well, 9 months ago when it arrived back in the trailer and rolled into the garage, and slowly and surely I've been working, building it back up. Today we're going to be doing some cavity wax. We're going to be using Dynax S50 from Bilthamber. And for some of the underbody stuff, we're going to be using Dynax UB. So S50 is the cavity wax product from Bilthamber, and the Dynax UB is again anti-corrosion wax designed for, let me see, long-term protection of steel surfaces exposed to harsh conditions. Now, this isn't a sponsored video. I bought these products. I highly recommend them. I've been using Bilthamber's rust preventative and remover solutions for years now, and could not recommend them more highly. So check them out. Again, I'll leave a link down in the description. But let's get cracking. Okay, so we're going to start with the cavity wax using the S50. They come with these great nozzles, which are, what about 80-90 centimeters, and the concept of this is obviously the longer they are, the more you can fire them down the panel, but they also don't spray out the end. They have a circular spray motion, so that means you can put it in as far as you go, spray it, and as you come out it's actually coating all around the inner cavity. So I'd never seen anything like that before. Maybe it's really common and you guys can say, yeah, actually everyone does it, but I thought it was really innovative and cool. So we're going to go on. I'll probably do a time lapse at this point because it's not going to be hugely exciting to watch me spray, but enjoy anyway. So that's us done for the sills, all coated, happy, checked with the Boroscope, everything looks good, well coated, so that should see them good for a few years anyway. The good thing actually about this truck in particular, when I went in initially with the Boroscope, someone already been in with some kind of wax oil type liners, so the sills weren't rotten, which was great. I did actually do that after it was painted, probably should have done it before it was painted, but we got away with it. So now I'm going to do a bit just of work underneath the rear bed. I'll not film that because it's right in underneath. I'm trying to even get the underbody stuff sprayed in the right direction, let alone bringing a camera in is going to be difficult, but we'll come back in the next part of the video to discuss what's coming up next and what the plans are for the Caddy. So disclaimer, I did a lot more under there than I was expecting to. The body shop had undersealed the truck before it came back, which was great, but it's those wee fiddly areas that you just can't get the big shoots gun up into. So with this we'll have the pointy nozzle, which was fantastic, just getting up and spraying. So hopefully that should keep it good for another 30 years. So what's next? Let's talk about that. So in a nutshell, I'll nearly fall over. In a nutshell, this is what's next. The 20 valve turbo conversion. So I went forward and back as the originality of the car. You know, it's quite rare given that it's a genuine sport and it has all the bits. So part of me wanted to keep it original and put the 18.8 valve engine back into it. But the fuel injection, the full fuel system on that engine is notoriously unreliable, and when it goes wrong it can be a disaster to try and sort. So I decided instead to go for a bit of modern drivability as well as the tuning potential of the 20 valve turbo engine. In terms of power, I'm thinking probably somewhere between 250 and 300 horsepower. You know, the truck doesn't weigh very much, so I think that's more than enough power, and I also want it to be usable. It's not going to be a daily driver by any stretch of the imagination, but I do want to be able to go out, enjoy it at the weekends, drive it, and drive it hard when it's got in this. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks very much for tuning in. It's been great to get this done. It's been a job I've been meaning to do from the truck came back from the body shop, so nice to get it done. If you have any suggestions or comments as to how you would have done things differently, how you normally do cavity wax and under seal, drop it down below in the comments. I'd also really appreciate if you like this, hit the thumbs up button, share it with your friends, hit the subscribe button. It really helps to get the content out there. And that's all for today. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.